meeting with a council member in the area, and he'll let me know if he's definitely unable to take part. So we'll give folks a moment and then get started. Hey, Kristen.
Sorry, thought my video was on. Hello.
Hey there. Sal, I
Hey
appreciate
Josh,
that.
I just got some things saying the content of this meeting is being sent to a third party. Do we know what that's about?
I don't, you're better than I am. I hit okay. So I probably shouldn't have done that. Chris, do you have a sense of what that might be? Is that about this being live? Or is that,
Yes, it's Zoom updated their terms of language. It's YouTube. It's YouTube. It's being live streamed on YouTube. So that third party is YouTube.
Okay,
gotcha.
got it.
Thank you. And Marian, sorry about the typo today. You caught it. It took me like 2 minutes to find the maroon in the slides.
Sorry.
I'm like, did she look in the notes and find them there? Where is that maroon? And then I identified it. Hi, Jeanette.
Hello.
All right. So I think we're all scheduled to be here, and so I think it's 6:04. We'll get started. Thanks everyone. September 25th. We are live with Unity's monthly board meeting for the month of September. And so with that, I think we'll get started and jump right in with our mission moment, which Jeanette got a sneak peek at last Thursday. For everyone else, it's brand new. Melissa, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So we have two snippets here from our first days of school. We are either just over a month or just around a month into our first month of school this year. So on the left, we see our high school team. This is Mr. Burkoff. He's one of our new teachers, and this is he is teaching AP Calc and AP Pre-Calc. Last year was our inaugural year of AP Pre-Calc. The College Board has been sharing that they think this is one of the key programs they hope schools adapt, and we did, and we had a lot of success. So here you see students from the beginning diving into learning. They're working together as a team. Communication is really important in these classes, that they're discursive. So jumping in there, and you can see Miss Olivier, one of our APs, in the mix in the background as well, launching our school. So you can see many layers of what's going on there. And then a clear picture on the right of Miss Ariel Terry, our middle school principal. Why I thought this one was great is it is her first year as Unity principal. She was an assistant principal last year and a principal in training the year before, but she started her career here as an educator, as as our Algebra 1 teacher, and has been with us for some years now. So a really clear story of how we've grown teachers to really invest in our community. And when folks say, are there opportunities for growth at Unity? I tell stories like this one, where I say our schools are led by folks who have been with us for a good long time.
Cool. Thank you for that, Melissa. And we'll jump into our agenda for today, which you all saw via email yesterday. We had a really solid group of committee meetings last week and then yesterday. So this is meant to be just the culmination of those meetings and the planning and discussion that happened within those sessions. And so today, I think there are probably four areas of deeper dive that we'll devote more of our time to, and that would be enrollment and its implications. It would be around staffing vacancies and its implications. And then I think beyond that, at the governance level, we launched two committees this past month. So bringing to the full board some of the discussions that happened both with the governance committee in that launch, as well as the development committee. So should be a good meeting tonight. We've got two items up for approval tonight. And so we move into current headlines. And I'm going to set this up just a bit differently. You're used to sort of seeing me have like maybe a few different slides of various aspects of the school and where we are. I'm going to hold this to two slides tonight and then allow for us to get deeper into a couple of areas. And so I'm doing that because I think it's important to zoom out and get a sense of kind of where we are, full context wise, and then where we're going and perhaps where we were last year. So I think with that, I divided things into strengths and challenges. And so from a strengths perspective, here is where we stand. We're coming off a year in which we had very strong and consistent enrollment over the course of the year, 550 students. We're also coming off a year in which we had our best ever middle school state exam results in ELA, math, and in science. We're coming off a year in which we had our best advanced placement results in terms of number of kids receiving college credit for their scores and having the fewest percentage of ones that we ever had on those exams. So some good things there. We're also coming off a year in which our graduation rate for attending students was 100%. When including our non-attending students, it was 90%. So among the best year we've had with regard to attending students. And then finally, from a immediate college matriculation standpoint, we had 90% of our students matriculate, which is also our highest ever. So some really good things coming out of the year. And as I look at these are all benchmark one related items on SED's performance framework. Moving on to challenges. So that's where we stand. Moving on to challenges. Here are things that we're working through right now and trying to resolve. So we did have a low retention rate in the 8th grade to our 9th grade this year. We're going to be talking about that during today's meeting, but that was at about 38%. We had mixed results on our Regents exams at the high school in June with some concerns in grades 9, specifically Algebra 1 and biology. Our enrollment right now is down 7.5%, and this adversely impacts our budgetary plannings. We'll dive into that today as we did during the committee meetings. And then finally, we do have some staffing shortages, which we're covering internally. But those are due to some rather abrupt resignations in August and September, and so we'll dive into that today too. So from a strengths and challenges standpoint, this is how I see things now. Let me pause and see if there are any clarifications or things coming out of the committee meetings that are worth bringing up at this point in time, knowing that we're going to dive into much of these more deeply a bit later in this meeting. All right, so with that in mind, now that we've got a full sense of the world in the month of September at Unity, I'll mention or at least show some of the other updates that have occurred at school. School is running and running, in my mind, rather strongly, perhaps the best start we've had from a leadership level over the first month. And so some of the same things that we typically do each year have happened. We've got rather good diagnostic data from our middle school using a new program. Melissa's going to mention a bit more about that later on. Our corrective action plans in 3 different areas of school have kicked off, and those are in process. Athletics are up and running. After-school programming at our middle school is up and running. We had open school nights at both sites last week, run rather successfully. We've got community service on the schedule in October, a couple of events there. And then from a governance level, as I said, we launched 2 committees, and we are in discussions right now with 2 prospective board members. And so that's exciting. Let's move forward. And that reminds me, Chris or Sal, would you do me a big favor, please? Can you pass on the link to Ram either via text or via email? Maybe both works. Could either one of you guys do that for me?
I will try.
Cool.
No
Sorry,
problem.
I meant to send him an invite, and I'm just remembering now that I may not have. He's planning on being here tonight, and so he needs a link to be here. So here we are. Thank you, Sal.
Yep.
I appreciate that. And so with those headlines of what's been happening at the school in mind, let's move into a couple of areas, I think, of the greatest interest. And so one would be just enrollment. And so I think everyone on the call now from the board saw this slide either during the SLC meeting on Thursday or during the AFC call on Friday. And so I'll share this now and provide a bit of an update on where we are versus where we were last week. I think when we spoke last week, we were at 501, maybe just below that. We were at 494 as of early September. So 504 as of today represents an uptick versus where we were as of the first week of school. This is versus a budget of 545. And then at the site level, we're at 251 at the middle school and 253 at the high school. The high school, we'd like to be north of 270, and ideally the same at the middle school. And so we went over the reasons for some of these for what we're seeing now and some of the challenges we're facing, and had especially a deep discussion with the AFC on Friday about this, but a good discussion with the SLC as well. And then I referred to some of the responses that we're taking now, which includes daily meetings with our recruitment team, which includes follow-ups with previously interested families, which includes referral requests to current families that has borne some fruit over the past couple of days. Essentially, our approach is this right now, to both backfill to narrow this gap of what is between 504 and 545. So ideally, we get to 515 by 10-4. We've made some gains over the past week, and we're aiming to be at 508 by Friday. That's our internal target. And so if we're at 515, we'll then think about the ways in which we manage things and do so responsibly through fiscal measures. And then at this point in time, we are obviously kind of carefully, we do have some vacancies, which I'll get into momentarily. And so we are moving along with those rather prudently in the event that we may not have to backfill or can't because of shortages in enrollment, which means that perhaps we have fewer students and don't need to backfill there. If there's a position that we do need to hire for, then we will move forward. But that's generally our approach right now. And again, that was discussed during Friday's call. Opening it up for discussion, is there anything here that would allow for greater clarity on sort of circumstances now with regard to enrollment and its implications?
In a way, Josh, sort of lower enrollments and staff vacancies could be a match made in heaven, sort of, right? I mean, is there any way you can rationalize and match competency, class sizes and everything to the smaller number of students and the smaller number of teachers? Is there a way that you can make that work or not really?
Yeah, no, you're thinking about this in the same way that we are internally. And so, yes, there is. It's not, always as clean or sort of unit-based, but that's what we're now measuring and discussing with an eye both on backfilling and an eye on where the vacancies lie. And I think Jeanette brought this up on Friday. We've made some good gains over the past year, and so we want to maintain those with regard to student learning. And so there's that kind of threefold balance of like continuing to make forward progress with regard to academic learning. And then also thinking about our staffing and where our needs are and our needs may not be. And then just what we're able to do given the resources we have.
Yeah.
So let me move on to where we are staffing wise, so you have a sense of things. And Marianne, this will give you a good sense of where our calculus is. So at the middle school, we have 2 vacancies right now, and we have one teacher who's on caregiver leave for the next couple of months. We are covering each of these positions internally with some rather talented folks. Our ELA chair, our literacy interventionist, who is a longtime ELA teacher at the school, as well as our director of support services. So our kids are in really strong hands with regard to this. It just stretches people thin. And so folks are working really hard right now to kind of balance that out. At the high school, we have a math opening, and we're covering that internally. And so there's some movement with regard to one teacher moving on to lead teach this course as opposed to co-teach another course. There are drawbacks to that, but we think this is the best solution. And then we have a history and learning specialist position that's open that we're now covering internally. So I think for us, as Marianne said, we're kind of monitoring the sustainability of these coverages that we have, as well as kind of interviewing selectively and weighing any hiring decisions with our under enrollment. And so it's a kind of daily formulation of decision making and thinking. What's been good is there's been good communication with our leadership at both sites, and they're aware of the circumstances and aware of kind of how this all works in best driving the school forward, given a differing number of kids at the school and resources available. We're going to move into a data dashboard, so we're kind of concluding headlines here. We can discuss enrollment and its implications on budget and/or staffing during other portions of the committee report outs tonight or during the executive session. So I assume there'll be a bit of both. So Jim, if you're okay, I'm going to move us forward to the dashboard.
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. So we're only in to school about 3 weeks. So some of the data that I bring to this board monthly is not yet matured such that it's valuable to report out on. So Michelle, who's managing our data this year, and myself looked at this data this morning and said, hey, there are 5 data points that are probably worthy of the board's attention tonight. And so I bring those to you, and those are in green. So enrollment we've talked about. And just to give you a picture of things, we were successful in reducing our maximum enrollment with the state from 655 to 615 in the spring. And so right now, that is our max enrollment, 615 versus the 655. Unfortunately, with an enrollment now at 504, we're at 82% of that max enrollment. And threshold-wise, we want to be north of 85%. Numbers-wise, that would mean an enrollment of 523. So ideally, we're at 523 or above that, and therefore above 85% of our max allowable enrollment with the state. Are there questions there? That's kind of weedy, but did people follow that? Yes, no? I'll assume it was digested and we move on to like utilization. And so
Josh, I'm in a loud place, so I'm just trying not to unmute too much, but yeah.
no worries. Cool. Thank you. In terms of utilization, if we stretched it out and went to 100% of our capacity at both sites, I think 570 is that number. And so we're at 88% of that right now. And then with regard to budget, we're at 92.5% of our budget, our budgeted enrollment. So that gives you a sense of where things stand versus those different measures. Looking at attendance right now, we're 4 weeks in the school at the middle school, 3 weeks at the high school, and we're seeing similar trends to last year. Enrollment at the middle school is very likely 92% or above. If you recall, everyone, we started school a week earlier than the DOE this year. And so in that first week of school, the last week of August, we had attendance of somewhere around 80%, and we expected that. And since that week, we've had attendance significantly higher than that. And so on average, we're at 90% right now, but I foresee that trending north and getting us to somewhere closer to 92% over time. At the high school, we're at 86%. We're 3 weeks in, and attendance has been consistently in the mid-80s. So I think this is something we're keeping an eye on and we'll need to likely double down on with regard to encouraging greater attendance among those who are not in school every day. And so that's now being discussed internally among team. Out of school suspension wise, we're only a few weeks in at the middle school. There have been no suspensions as of 9/20. At the high school, there have been 3. So we're at 1% at the high school. Retention wise with staff, I mentioned some of the abrupt resignations. So we're not on target there. And so at the middle school, we've had an ELA teacher resign this month. And at the high school, we've had a math teacher resign and an ELA learning specialist. I won't go into context with each of these, but we know the backstory, and I'm happy to kind of talk offline about circumstances there. And then with regard to participation, we've had quorum with our board over the past 2 months. So I thank you all for making time on a Wednesday night. That's the dashboard. Next month, we'll have more data. I imagine we'll have data for each and every one of these values, and we'll selectively report out those that are most worthy during the October meeting. Before I move on, are there any clarifying questions or recommendations for this dashboard and what was presented? Okay, so with that, we'll move into committee reports this evening, and we're going to start with student learning. And what you see now in front of you on your screen is the agenda from last Thursday's meeting with Jeanette and Juliana. We've talked about the headlines from that meeting already, so no additional report out there. Under the advice of the SLC, we're going to report an abbreviated version of of what we found with our diagnostic testing in the middle school in math and ELA. Melissa's going to report that out. And then I'm going to share out just an FYI on where we are with corrective action plans in 3 different areas of the school. And so, Melissa, I hand the mic to you.
Great. Team, we're going to talk about our iReady reading diagnostic and math diagnostic. This is our first year using iReady as our primary screener. It is replacing STAR. It has a few advantages over STAR that we're focusing on and moving towards as an organization. First of all, it allows us to use the adaptive learning platform that comes along these tests that align a pathway to each individual student. It also provides just clearer reporting for all stakeholders. You'll see some of that reporting briefly tonight, but for parents, teachers, and kids especially, this just makes it a little bit more crystal clear where kids are and how they have moved. iReady, in addition to being our screener, acts as our tier 1 tutoring curriculum. Each day, 4 days a week, rather, at the middle school, students are engaged in a 30-minute tutoring block where they are either on this adaptive technology or working directly with a teacher based on data they see. So for most students, they're engaged in this for 30 minutes per day, which brings us to 45 minutes a week per content, as is recommended by the platform to see some significant gains in student learning. It's utilized in 6 through 8 daily, and it will be rolled out to grade 9 as a screener and for use in interventions like SETs and after school. Overall, the screener results show sort of 3 high-level trends. One is that student skills in math and reading are in line with last year's fall iReady report. Because we used this as our curriculum last year, we did give it to kids once, but not more than once, because we didn't want to spend the year constantly testing them, having started with STAR. When we look at last year's results next to this year's results, they are very similar with some grade level differences. Specifically, our 6th grade in both math and reading skills outperformed last year's 6th grade class. So we know that the students we've recruited for this year are coming in with some strengths above last year's class. This is consistent in looking at their state test scores as well. And we do know, and this is consistent with years past, that a majority of students in 6th through 8th grade are more than 2 years below grade level in reading and math. That makes this screener information really important as we plan differentiated and specific instruction for our students, and it double clicks our need for that daily during the day tutoring block for kiddos. Questions here on our high level context and some of the high level results. We'll move into some of the specifics of data, Josh.
Yeah, and just as you do, again, a couple of things to underline here. So STAR is gone, iReady is now present. There's some advantages to it. We're using it daily. If you recall, we didn't have a tutoring block before last year. We found it to be valuable. So we're now in the 2.0 phase of that, which is great. And like our kids are somewhat familiar with this program because they've seen it in elementary school. So this is really exciting stuff. And the data that it provides is really informative and quite rich. So
yes.
Here is a sample.
The board should also know, as we report data on this, that iReady is really meant for K through 8th grade. It is not designed for high school. We will screen our 9th graders with iReady, and we can use it for students whose skills are more in line with the middle school level when we see that. But our shift is looking at this as a 6th through 9th grade tool for the most part, rather than 6th through 12th grade, which is the reason we used STAR before. So as you see this reported, there will be a focus on the middle school going forward. Here we have how students perform this year. This is an example of the actual reports that the team can see, including parents. Oh yes, there seems to have been a little. We have math above and reading below. You can see that about 60% of our students scored as 2 grade levels or below in math. The dark red line represents 3 grade levels below, red 2, yellow 1 grade level below, and greens represent early on grade and mid or above grade level. In reading, we had across the school 52% of students in that 2 or more grade levels below, indicating need for intervention above what can be received in class. Our middle school students are currently utilizing and have been for several weeks their My Path for 90 minutes weekly. Unless they are getting small group tutoring in groups of no more than 6 with their teachers based on data. We have currently shared results with families, and students are getting their results. They're getting more one-on-one coaching on those results, and inclusive in those results are individual goal setting for the year. We are hoping to see students move across bands across the year. So these students who are 3 or more grade levels behind, we hope by the end of the year, they will be in that 2 or more grade levels, et cetera, et cetera. And then across time for 6th graders, that will mean ending on grade level. Teachers are using the program's suggested strategies. In addition to just creating a My Path, it creates a series of academic recommendations for students. It breaks out, and SLC saw this even further into skills, so teachers can use that in their planning for both small group and whole class supports. And we are continuously developing on using this platform throughout the year. So we do have an additional development time planned with curriculum associates on 10/9. This will be on using data to plan instruction.
Melissa, question.
Yep.
If I'm a parent, how often do I receive updates on how my child is doing in math and reading?
Yes, so we do this at three times a year. And so the next opportunity for parents to receive a report will be in January. And then they'll also get one towards the end of the year to see how students progress and if they met their goals. In addition, that report is not just a report of how students did at a grade level. It breaks out into skills and even gives some recommendations for families on what a student might practice. So that 3-time-a-year report gives parents sort of enough material to support at home as well. My children also, as Josh's have used this program. Actually, one of them is upstairs right now doing his math. I ready homework.
Excellent. So I guess if there are no questions, we'll move on to the second report out from the SLC committee, which is around corrective action plans for this year. And so just to give you a bit of the purpose and context behind it. So as a school, we aim for big things, and that's reflected in our goals each year. And so at the end of each year, we look back and say, which goals did we meet? Which goals didn't we? And if we didn't meet a goal, we try to double down and make corrections so that it's achieved in our second attempt. And we prioritize here. And so this process of correction is now more formal at the school than we've had before, and it's called the Corrective Action Plan. And it's meant to be comprehensive and involve multiple stakeholders at all levels of the school that drive results in a specific area. Each of those people have roles and responsibilities over the course of the year, and there are milestones. And there are designated people that are responsible for managing, monitoring, performing, and implementing a CAP. And so we adopted and then adapted SED's kind of CAP format for our school internally. And so this isn't something that's cast upon us. It's something that we want to act on internally. And so we've identified 3 areas of the school for this year in which CAPs are being implemented. And you're aware of these, given some of the data we've shared out, but one is in biology. Another is in Algebra 1, 2 high school intro courses, 9th grade typically, and then another CAP with regard to the rate of enrollment at Unity High among our 8th graders. And so what you see here are where we were this past year, which reflected a deficiency, and where we'd like to be ideally this year. And so with that, I'll give you a quick sneak peek on how these are assembled. And so this is a summary of our CAP for biology. Again, the deficiencies at the top and our goal of 60% proficiency is what we're aiming for this year in making the correction. The CAPs themselves have key actions, and we've mapped those out through Q1, and those involve materials and the strengthening of them, the curriculum and the things being used at the school to drive learning each and every day. In addition to that, There's the assessments we use to drive decisions and remediate and move forward with. And so that's also a part of this cap. There's like just the daily work of facilitation. And so increasing the regular observation schedule and feedback cycle such that we're getting better each and every week with regard to facilitation and execution. That's a part of the plan. And then finally, I'm thinking about where students are individually and what their needs are and making sure that we are addressing those needs in small group or individually. And so that's here too. In terms of where we are now with the cap a month in, the cap's been shared with the full team of people who are part of being responsible for the implementation of the cap. Instructional materials and assessments have been strengthened over the course of the summer and August. We've got data cycles that will begin this week. And then we have observation and feedback cycles that have commenced as well within those courses. And this course being biology. And then we had a check-in last week, and we'll be having check-ins weekly moving forward. So during the SLC meeting, I shared the cap with Jeanette and with Juliana, and so we discussed those. But that's generally how this flows. Are there questions about caps in general at Unity or about this specific cap before we move forward to the third cap? So the third cap is around retention from 8th grade to 9th grade. We were at 38% last year, want to be closer to 60% and ideally closer to 75% of our students from middle school attending our high school moving forward ultimately. Actions for us right now in Q1 include taking our recruitment manager and making them cross-site and having them become more familiar with our high school as well as our middle school. That person was middle school centric in prior years. We've clarified some of the messaging among our recruitment team for the scope of our high school counseling, specifically what we offer to families seeking services or support with outreach to schools beyond Unity High. All of our resources, academically, counseling wise, are really as a 6-12 school being channeled to our upperclassmen, grades 10, 11, and 12 in their college and career endeavors. So that's just what we were built for. So limited resources for middle school families seeking schools beyond Unity High. There have also been some conversations with 8th grade teachers about messaging and approach with regard to the way in which we offer counseling at the middle school. What we're doing now is planning out specific interactions among stakeholders across sites. So there's familiarity with what is amazing at our high school and what is amazing at our middle school, and how we join forces and make sure that what we've designed 6-12 wise is what our kids are experiencing. And then we've had some communication with our 8th grade families regarding our approach to high school counseling, and that took place during open school night. And we're now planning for a rather significant visit to our high school among our entire 8th grade happening in early November. So those are things happening in Q1. I think just as we face some challenges with regard to needing to backfill, it requires us to both plan out recruitment for the coming year as well as do some strengthening with regard to our current enrollment. So I would name that as one challenge for us. Again, I'll pause here and see if folks have specific questions about this cap, perhaps some ideas, ways of making this stronger, if I left something up. Okay, so with that, that's the full report out from the SLC. We'll now move into the governance committee, and this is the agenda from last Tuesday or Wednesday of last week. And what we're going to focus on tonight is just sharing out the purpose as discussed by the committee for this governance committee, as well as some of the goals that were discussed and refined during the course of that meeting. Jeanette and Jim and Marianne, if you have other things you'd want to incorporate into the report out here, feel free to just chime in. But I'll start with just purpose and goals. And so the draft purpose is here, A through H. And so in terms of this committee, this is what they're aiming to do. And I have made some updates, team, to this. And so you'll see those highlighted in blue where I've made updates or added some things coming from the discussion on Wednesday. So this committee ensures that the board follows bylaws just formally. It leads in board communication with the authorizer. It ensures that strategic plans and goals for goals, and then that a governance calendar is established. It leads in the performance review of the executive director and ensures the administration of an annual board self-assessment. It also oversees the achievement of governance goals, both collective and individual, and then manages board membership, new folks coming in, perhaps folks departing, etc. And then finally, it oversees the formalizing of like systems and procedures for governance at the school as we look to kind of just mature and build out some things that perhaps aren't so people dependent and more about just how we do things at Unity. And so a number of things this committee does, all which are valuable. It's cool to have some clarity here with regard to which area of the board make sure that these sorts of things happen. And so are there questions, I guess, Sal, are there questions that you have, or are there additional things that those members of this committee want to share out now? All right, I think I hope that represented kind of what's here with
Yeah, I
regard.
think that's a decent summary, and we're, obviously it's a evolving mandate, because as we go through it, we might find that it doesn't quite fit or that we need to do other things too, but that's a good start.
Yeah, so in addition to establishing a 1.0 purpose of the committee, within the first meeting, we also discussed tentative goals, and here were some of the goals that were discussed. I've added one coming from the discussion, but these are all meant to roll out directly from the purpose. So given this purpose, this is what we're aiming for. And so bylaws being followed, a governance calendar being up to date and followed. This year, and this came out of the board self-assessment in the spring, really looking to add to the board with specific expertise in education and fundraising, and we're actively working toward that, which I'm excited about. We've got the creation or the formulation of a formal process and timeline for evaluating school leadership. Board members participating in one school event annually, potentially the piloting of individual goals among board members. That was something that was discussed in the self-assessment in the spring and throughout the summer. So that's something that the board may pilot. And then all board members contributing meaningfully to development, such that development goals are met, and then select systems and procedures for governance being documented and formalized over the course of the year. These things take hold. Really, really great first year for this committee, which means good things for school. Committee members, would you add anything to what's here? Maybe offer insights on what you prioritize?
I think my overall goal is that we have a solid governance structure with the right processes, the right responsibilities, and the right consequences. I think it's going to help just formalize what's supposed to happen when, who owns what goal, and how do we optimize our performance in all areas against our goals.
Thank you for that, Marian. I think with that, if there are no other questions, we'll move into the next committee report out. And that is with the Audit and Finance Committee. Here was the agenda, and I'll say we devoted, because we're so early in the year, there hasn't been all that much action with regard to financials. We spent more of our time thinking about enrollment and kind of plans moving forward in both backfilling and or in strengthening our systems such that like we're really strong consistently enrollment wise and not facing challenges. So I think with that, we spent some time on the same slide that I reviewed earlier, which provides just an update on where we are, why we're there, and what we're doing about it. With that, folks who were on that call on Friday, would you add anything? Is there anything else worth bringing to the full board within the realm of audit and finance?
I don't think so, and I think you said at the beginning, Josh, that everybody is, or I think I heard that everybody has heard about enrollment challenges, so if that's the case, then I'm okay moving on. I think it's important for everyone to understand that.
Yep.
But not to crack than we've had in a little while.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the case. I think the two folks who weren't a part of some of those conversations were Lenny, who was at the governance committee. We didn't talk about it then, and then Trudy, who was out last week. So we'll have to circle back with them, but everyone else was a part of some of those conversations. Okay, so we move now into the next committee report out, which was development. And similar to the governance committee, this was a first meeting. And at that meeting was Sal and Ram and Mitra from our UAC. Sal, quick note, did you get in touch with Ram? Were you able to connect?
I did. I sent him a link, and he said something
He
about
said
7:30.
7:30, I think, is when he could take part. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right, so we move into, and I think what we'll share out now, and Sal, let me know if this makes sense to you. We'll share out what was discussed with regard to purpose. We'll discuss annual goals in a nutshell. The board has seen these goals from prior meetings, but we'll bring them back to review. And then I'll share out just some tidbits on a revised donor list in alignment with goals. The idea being we've got goals with development. In order to do that, you've got to have ample support coming from a network of people. And so I'll say a bit more about how we're thinking about goals in alignment with donors. And then beyond that, we'll talk about timeline and next steps more immediately. And if there's more that folks want to talk about, we can either talk about it during this portion of the meeting or during the executive session. So I think with that, I'm going to move into purpose first. And so this is what we came up with during the development call. And so I think it's important for the full board to be aware of what this committee does and perhaps doesn't do. And so I think big picture, this committee ensures that the school secures the resources necessary to soundly realize its mission. That's a big kind of umbrella term, but what that means is four things. First, it ensures that annual development goals are established. Check, we've done that. And now it's about kind of bringing that fully into the mix with regard to our monthly meetings. Secondly, there's ensuring that an action items calendar for fundraising is established and implemented according to plan. And so like that being something that we review monthly, that's then reported out to the full board and celebrated and or refined based on what the needs are and what our progress looks like. Third, there's ensuring that the full board is familiar with the status of development. So that's a little redundant, but a little different too. And then finally, that the committee promotes the full board's active participation in development. And so that's what we discussed and felt good about that. Any commentary coming from other board members who weren't a part of this committee around the committee's goals or purpose?
I think it's more an emphasis than a comment, but I think that should include close coordination with the AFC in budgeting to make sure they know what's being assumed for fundraising for the budget. And so I think we need coordination there.
Yeah, good stuff. Agreed. And just like, I mean, you know, a school leader can say, yeah, they're aligned, but I think it's good that governance is sort of like ensuring that is the case. And so, well said, noted. And I think with that, so we'll move into the way in which we're sort of thinking about this. And so from a goals perspective, in our budget, there is a goal of $600,000 in fundraising. Of that, $200,000 is assumed to be coming from foundations or grants. And that's roughly in line with some of the work we've done in the past, but we're now putting more effort toward it. And so we should see more coming from that effort. And I'm thinking specifically about the hiring of a part-time development director who has been pretty active with regard to both connecting with foundations as well as actively applying. So again, $600,000 overall, $200,000 of that six coming from foundations or grants. In addition to that, there's $400,000 in kind of donor support. And within that, that's broken down such that $100,000 is coming from insiders, which I'm defining as board members, UAC members, or FOMB members as well. And then $300,000 coming from donors beyond the inside, our networks, or the networks of the school. Let me pause there and see if there are questions about that or whether I misquoted or said something that was confusing.
I mean, how do we get to those numbers?
Oh,
Or do they have like an underpinning and something we've done before, or how?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's been a lot of variation, and some of the work that we might do isn't just even like charting donations over the past 12 years, which I think Kristen has actually done. And there's been variation fairly dramatically from from one year to the next, particularly during the last few years with COVID. And so this is within the realm of that range. I'll say that the 600,000, it represents 3.5% of our revenues at the school. And it's in line with, in looking at specific kind of items of expense at the school, it's tied to things that the school needs and would benefit from. And so with this funding, we're able to just sort of buffer and make sure that we maintain those services from going away. And so in our initial fundraising plan from the spring, one of those areas was literacy interventions happening. And I think there were $200,000 that would be great going toward that. And so that's one big bucket of that 600,000. So, I mean, there are a few different ways to look at it. One is it's within what we've done in the past, although there is a range in what we've done in the past. And maybe that's due to just us not formalizing our systems with development in a way that we can or are doing now. It's in line with, as a nonprofit, the sort of funding as a school we're raising to support or supplement our operating budget. And then it represents some pretty direct needs and some interest in school in alignment with its mission. Does that make sense or suffice, Mario?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how we stack up at the end of the year, and that'll be the best metric. But yeah.
Yeah, so I think we're getting into it, and I kind of anticipated some of your thinking here too, just based on prior conversations. And so there's the grant funding and the foundation funding of $200,000. And so I'm not going to go into that as much today. I'm going to go into like the 400,000 and where that comes from. And I think we all need to feel confident that there's a path forward with that. And so the work that's been done over the course of the past month or two is being to sort of say, hey, will our current network of support kind of get this done? And if not, what would we need to do? And so here's a summary of that analysis where in looking at roughly our historics and those who have given in the past who are defined as insiders, those currently on the board, those on FOMB's board or UAC members, in looking at that and then in shoring up our system somewhat, where people are both giving and then helping out to expand our network in a reasonable way, there's a path toward getting to the $100,000. And that's in thinking about this in two ways. Offering a range of what a low give might be for an individual board member or a high. And so this is Something that is sort of happening internally now where it's not their estimates. So it's just like, hey, given what's been given in the past, this is probably a low uh, amount that one person might be able to give with the school, and here's an amount that might be north of that. And so in doing that work, this summary provides just for insiders a range if we had 25 people giving at the school in the coming year, and then also actively encouraging others to give within that $100,000. So somewhere between 97 and 193 is what is possible if we're operating in a way that is effective development-wise in the coming year. From a donor level, those are folks who are not insiders. In looking at our historic donor list and then expanding it reasonably so, but not so ambitiously so. I think this is feasible. There are about 60 donors within this initial summary, and in thinking about potential giving there, the range could be somewhere between $254,000 to $500,000. And so there's range here, and it's possible to get there based on that sort of initial analysis, where we've got to deepen that analysis and make sure that it's real and then begin acting on it too. And so that action begins this month. Before going into some of the things happening this month, let me pause again to see what insights or questions or potential concerns people have. I think questions is probably where you are, and we may be able to answer some of those tonight, and then others might happen offline. Sal, we looked at this somewhat last night. I've updated it somewhat based on our conversation. Anything you'd share that perhaps I was less clear on?
Well, I think that if I don't know how much detail you're going to go into the donor list or kind of that spreadsheet that you put together, but for the rest of the group, Josh put together this let's call it a donor list, and it made up the medium or major donors. I forget what terminology you use, something like that. So if it was 10,000 or more, that was a major donor, and then I don't know, 1,000 to 10,000 was a category. A look at those folks historically, what are they bringing in? That's a number. That's a real number, and kind of building around that. Loosely speaking, is how this was put together. Now, there is an element, and I don't know, again, how much detail we're going to get into today and this is where the insiders will come into play here, is not only are we, I'm going to use the word hope, hoping that the insiders do what that kind of we're expecting, but they're able to multiply that with their network, I think 3 times.
Roughly speaking. And
roughly
so
speaking.
if I'm an active donor, I give this year, I'm looking to then find 3 others to also provide some sort of contribution to the school and making a case.
Josh, if I can, I think we have to be a little careful. Like we didn't set up a committee just to squeeze the board. And we're a board that asks people to work, right? There's a lot of boards out there where all you gotta do is give money and get your friends to give money. This is not it, right? So I think we should have discussion about, what exactly we want people to do, because is this starting to look like a board where you're expected to hit your network for large numbers of money, and that I'm not sure that's what all of us signed up for.
Yeah, I think some of those conversations should happen offline, and you're right. I think that's appropriate. So I think we're giving kind of an overview today, but perhaps there isn't enough detail to sort of offer an overview that is complete. And so let's kind of move on from this now, and I'll talk about next steps with the month of October. And so with that, The slides present, if we've alluded to the development plan a couple of times tonight, and you all, we looked at it both in May and June, and then perhaps in August too, but there's a link within the agenda if you want to pull it up again as a PDF. So you'll sort of see what's there, and it represents the latest thinking through December of what a development plan would look like for the year. In terms of October, here's the set of actions. And so we are, and I'm saying I'm taking the lead on this, but not responsible solely for it, is the raising of $25,000. And some of this would come from repeat donors from prior years, and I see that being very feasible. In addition, I'll be meeting with 5 mid to major donors, and these are inside folks who have given in the past. So I've had some conversations with people already and will continue to. In addition to that, there's the planning out of Giving Tuesday and that initiative. I see that as being more of a plan of excitement where perhaps we're thinking more about the number of people who give to the school regardless of amount. And that's something we haven't done before, and I think it's irresponsible. In addition to that, we would like to schedule one small donor event in November, and maybe that's a cocktail party. Maybe it's a dinner, maybe it's at a bar, maybe it's someone's house. But I think doing that and getting that within our routine is healthy for both this committee and the work we're doing in the initiative. And then finally, in December, thinking about a matching initiative as we close out the year. And so I've got some thoughts on that, but that might be a way of enticing greater giving at the end of the year because it would mean more for school and for kids. And so in terms of goals here, October, the milestone would be to raise $25,000 for the school, again, mainly through repeat donors. In November, we do the same in focusing on mid to major donors, and that would be 50,000. And then in December, where this is ambitious but can happen, looking to raise 100,000. And we've done that in prior years without the same amount of effort and focus. So that's the goal for October. We'll report that out in October, see where we are, and reassess. We'll do the same thing in November and the same thing in December. And that is where we are right now. So I think with that, that's the discussion that took place with the development committee as of yesterday, and we'll continue over the course of this month, both individually and with the committee next month. So with that, Jim, I'll hand things over to you for board approval on items this month.
Okay, thanks, Josh. Okay, first item up for approval is the minutes from the prior meeting. Does anybody have any questions or comments on that? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. And then second, Josh, is this the final approval for Juliana, or
No,
is it...
this was an oversight. One thing that we did not do is, while we did all the work in bringing Juliana on, the one thing we didn't do is have it in the agenda, and that was flagged recently for us just as a resolution, which is required by the education department. So this is meant to sort of just follow up on that, get that resolution formalized, and then hand it off to state for a quick approval.
Okay, so this is our approving her membership to the board.
To then submit to state for then state to say, yes, she's an amazing board member candidate, get her signed up, make it happen.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you. All right.
Cool. And I don't think there are any members of the public here tonight, but here's the time and space to have folks contribute. And with nothing there, here's what we're looking at for our meeting in October. There was some interest among the board in building out some time for in-person time. And so this is our first kind of go at that. October 23rd, 6 p.m. There's an in-person meeting at 584 Driggs. We had dinner follow from that.
Josh, Jeanette and I have a work like that day that there's nothing we can do about. So hoping it works for others, but it's not gonna work for either one of us.
Okay. Good to know. Let's see. Options could include shifting the meeting to Tuesday or Thursday. would that be? That would mean you being out twice, which I don't know about you, but I hate doing during the week.
I'm fine with being out twice, but let's look at calendars, maybe like send a doodle to people to see if you have enough
Yeah.
people for the third, by all means, keep it.
I think that's the best move. So we'll have Chris, if you could do that, send out a doodle poll, find a different date within this realm that kind of works for others. Does that make sense?
Will do.
Cool, thank you.
And just for what it's worth, I also have something on the 22nd. Unfortunately, that week seems to be a favorite of everybody trying to schedule stuff.
So if we do it on that Thursday, we're gonna get you having back to back to back events. All right, we'll see.
It's fine.
So, okay, so in terms of agenda items and what to expect, I think we'll certainly be definitely back to enrollment updates and what that means for budget. Kristen and I will be doing some work in the meantime, along with other teammates. We will have updates on development. We'll also have some updates on the renovation of 584 Driggs Avenue, which we might get into during the executive session tonight. We've got some time, which is great. And those are three big items, not the only items, but three big items I foresee taking up some of our time and attention. Are there other items that members would want to bring to light here tonight? So I
Okay.
think